G'day Kyla, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. So to start things off, what's your favourite dinosaur?
I don't know much about dinosaurs. T-Rex, rhinoceros. When I was young, I was like, dinosaurs aren't real. Museums are lying. Nothing was that big.
But away from the comedic aspect, so you are a up-and-coming poet extraordinaire.
Oh boy. Keep them coming, I guess.
And so what is poetry to you?
Well, for me, it's storytelling in the most basic sense. It's giving away parts of myself into the world and letting it run free. You know, like, offering some of myself.
Right. That's great. And you were a part of the Auckland Writers Festival on May 17th. Yeah. And so, why don't you talk us through that process?
How did you get to be there?
So I got an email from Grace Taylor, who is an amazing poet, activist, like an all-around amazing, wonderful creator in person. She emailed me saying she wanted to get 6 poets to come together and write poems about what it means to be tender. And of course, I love Grace and everything she does, so I was like, yes, I'll do it. But the thing that was like different was like it was Auckland Writers Festival, and I remember the first time I went to Auckland Writers Festival was seeing Patrick Ness, this like international author, when I was like in high school, and I was like, oh my god, this is like a big deal, and I was like, oh, my chance would be at Auckland Writers Fest would be pretty cool. So yeah, that's how I came about it.
And so sorry, what was that name you mentioned? Who was he?
Patrick Ness.
Okay.
He wrote like the Knife of Letting Go trilogy.
Okay, and what's that about?
I didn't read it. I just knew he was a big deal.
Oh, okay. All right then.
The theme of tender. How did you interpret that in terms of your poetry?
Yeah.
So to me, that was being tender, like kind of being kind to yourself. I got a lot of poems that are very aggressive and like that draw from a lot of pain and trauma and stuff like that. So I chose poems that that one I enjoyed performing, and that two that I would feel great by the time I finished performing it, and like just poems that made me feel good. And even though some of the poems had aspects of like hurt or like heartbreak, it was still things that were like being kind to the hurt. Like it wasn't so much as like exposing myself and being like, here's my pain.
Yeah.
It was like subtle.
Yeah. And what was so how many poems did you actually perform that night?
I performed 3 poems.
Okay. And what were they called?
So the first one I performed was my Asian Eyes poem.
Yep.
And it was about my conflict with my identity and like in the end coming to terms, being proud of like who I am, and this aspect of like being embarrassed of having Asian eyes when I was younger, but now being empowered and proud of it. And the second one was about a friendship breakup. It's called Tight French Braid, and it's about me and my friend in intermediate who had a falling out, and like years later realizing, like that shouldn't have happened, but it does, and it's as painful as a romantic breakup.
Yeah. And
then my last one is about a poem about clubbing with my friend and my experience with that, but it's more an ode, a love letter to my best friend, which is in contrast to the second poem about a friendship breakup. So yeah.
And all 3 of these poems, if I remember rightly, they were part of your manuscript?
They were. Yeah, they were. It was great to revisit those poems again and perform it instead of like just having it sit on the paper. Yeah.
Did you find yourself changing lines and whatnot before performing? Yeah.
Like, because when you're writing, it's different, right? Like you're more concerned of how it looks on the page, but like when it's performed, like I wanted to like have it more conversational and not so like, because when you perform stuff, like the audience doesn't have a long time to like think about what you're saying. They take what you give them right then and there. So like I wanted to convey my poems so that the audience would understand it as soon as possible. Yeah.
Right. And when we spoke with Carrie the other day, she mentioned that she actually memorizes all her poems. Do you do that as well?
I used to, back in my day, back when times were simple. Some of the poems I've said out loud a couple of times, so they were familiar to me. But like some of them, like my last poem, like I had to have my paper with me.
Right.
Well, for 2 poems actually, I had to have my paper with me. Because like I didn't want to like blank out and forget it and like have the audience waiting for like 5 minutes for me to memorize something, which was also great about the show because Grace had let us know like, hey, we don't want to put pressure on you to memorize the piece.
Yeah.
The theme is about being tender and being kind to yourself. So however you want to perform it, if you want to read it, memorize it, that's up to you. So which was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had the papers with you on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Only for like one of them I didn't because the poem about my friend, like I said it so many times.
Yeah, fair enough. And when you're up there on stage, do you ever get stage fright or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's always before the performance though, like so many things are going through your head. Your heart is racing. You're like thinking of all the scenarios of what could go wrong, and you're like, I don't want to be here. I want to call my mom to pick me up. But as soon as like you stand up, and it's your time, and there's that bit of silence before you start, then it goes away. Because it's like you can't escape. So like you're here now, so might as well do your thing.
True. So really the only way to get over it is just by getting up there and doing it.
Just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also,
Cool.
like thinking about like how many people, like thinking about the audience, thinking about the people who like asked you to be here, and like you want to make them proud and like do justice to the whole stage.
Exactly.
How do you find it working with, melding your work and working with the other poets?
So it was a real blessing because all the poets that I worked with, they're all like heroes of mine, and like when I was just starting poetry, they were people that I looked up to, and now getting to perform with them was just like a starstruck moment. And it also helps that like all of us really get along, and like we're all like good friends, and some of them have mentored me through my own poetry. So we actually wrote our pieces separately, and then when we came together, we sorted out which pieces would go well together, as in like which tone of poems would suit the next one. So yeah, that's how we sorted out who would go where.
And with that collaboration, was there any time where you guys kind of bumped heads or no?
No. I don't have any juicy stories. No, we all got along really well, and it was like a really good process.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
A really interesting thing I found was the venue.
Yeah.
And you will have performed in a number of different venues.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, the good old tent.
Yeah.
It was really dark. Like first impression was really dark. I was like, how am I gonna see my paper? Oh, that's great. Poetry. It was every venue is a good experience or a good learning curve. I could see my paper, by the way. But the audience was super dark. Usually in other venues, like the audience would be dark, but you could see their faces because there were people like on the side kind of behind me, and I would like try my best to like give them eye contact and like make sure they're like part of it. So it was just that not being able to see everyone's faces was a bit different because you kind of want to talk to this part of the venue, but you feel like you're talking to the dark and you wonder like, is anyone even there? Am I just saying it to the wall?
And so can you feel empathy or feedback in that situation from the audience? You know, whereas
Yeah,
with
where-
eye contact and light, they're looking at you and they're
Yeah.
acknowledging and stuff. And in that situation, could you actually feel that? I certainly felt it amongst all the people I was sitting with.
Well, since it was dark, it was kind of like a kind of less pressure because you couldn't see anyone's face if they didn't like it. But also, like, I think at parts when like the audience was silent and you can see, like, even if you can't see their face, you can see like their silhouette just like focusing on you, and it was silent. It was like a nice feeling because you know that you're the only voice in that moment and you're the one they're listening to, and that kind of like quietness and like not having a lot of faces takes away from how like distracting sometimes it can be. So like it kind of eased me a bit. And yeah, in terms of feeling the empathy from the audience, I definitely felt that. It was a really like good vibe. Sometimes you can hear them react as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got to say, where I was sitting, when you did your Asian Eyes poem, everyone around me really got it and related, you know.
Oh,
And they were making sounds and stuff, and I thought, man, that's connected.
yeah.
So I just thought I'd just pass that back to you.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
Do you have a couple lines from that poem you could? No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
I can't do it off the top of my head.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't have a good memory these days.
But so I want you to jump in a time machine right now.
Yeah.
And I want you to go back to when you first started poetry. It's okay if it's a personal question and you don't want to answer, but
That's all good.
what actually made you start writing poetry?
So, so back in year 10, I was like sort of like the quiet kid in high school.
Right.
So like I didn't really know how to express myself or like talk to like people. So like I always loved writing, and I always like loved expressing myself on the page. But so it wasn't until my English teacher, Mr. Nicholson, in
Yeah.
year 10, he showed us. We were preparing for our speech assessment, and he showed us a video from a poet named Sarah Kay, and it was a poem called B. And as soon as I saw that poem, this powerful-looking Asian woman on stage telling her
Yeah.
story, and everyone connecting with her, and it immediately connected with me because I was like, whoa, that kind of like power on stage is really cool when like you're in command of like
Yeah.
your surroundings.
Right.
And so from then on, that's when I started to like dabble in a bit of like performance poetry and like
Cool.
joining competitions, going to open mic nights, and like
Awesome.
testing the waters out for myself.
Cool. So I recall something from a couple of years back. Am I mistaken? Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but Oni Ho Strickland took you under her wing or something?
Yeah,
for a
she
while?
did.
Yeah, and so what did she teach you?
So we were part of inter-high school poetry slam called We're the Frontline.
Yeah.
And wherein schools from Auckland come together in preparation for a competition.
Right.
And each school had a mentor.
Yeah.
In my school, Onehunga High, we had One. And so she helped us with our performance and like gave us advice on our writing whenever we needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was really cool because like when we first came on the first day of like We're the Frontline, we saw all the coaches perform, and when we saw Oneho, we were like, whoa, she's really cool. It would be really cool if she was our coach. And lo and behold, she was our coach. Yeah.
Yeah, funny how that sort of thing works
Yeah.
out.
What's ahead?
Yeah.
What's ahead? In terms of I'm thinking of like taking a backseat into writing and performing at the moment, because from our last year of creative writing and our degree, we did a lot of writing and a lot of emotions and feelings out on the paper. And even before or when I'm getting ready to perform, I get into this space of like, okay, now it's time to be emotional. And that kind of process, as rewarding as it is in the end, it's kind of draining for me. So now that I'm a working girl, now that I have a full-time job, I'm just gonna take it slow. I'll write when I feel like it. I'll still read, keep the reading a constant, but like I'll be content watching people at the moment. Yeah.
Fair enough. So
But we're so pleased we didn't hear that you're walking away from it.
No, yeah,
You-
no.
You'll obviously come back to your writing and
Yeah.
performance and that.
Definitely, like, can't let it go. It's like I was gonna say bad rash, but that's not a good image. But it's kind of like that, like.
Yeah.
So when you're not up on stage doing your thing and sitting down at the desk and writing your poems out, what are you doing?
Oh well, I'm working.
Yeah.
I have weird hours at my job, so a lot of that is just trying to get some sleep in, get some.
And
get
this is
some
at the
rest.
airport.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
at the airport. Being mentally prepared for the day ahead, because you never know what kind of passengers you're gonna get. And when I'm not working, I'm just sitting down on my couch, watching Netflix,
Cool.
playing with my dog. But I like to go out a lot and make the most of my days, because our rotation is a 6 days on, 3 days off situation. So
Okay.
when I'm on my 3 days, try to make the most of it. Go out, hang out with friends. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have you ever written another poem about your dogs or where your dog features?
I have written a poem about my dog.
Yeah, I
It's about
remember you
the-
reading one. I thought it was a really good poem.
Thank you.
Really insightful. you
Yeah.
know.
the mortality of a dog's life.
Have you recorded or performed that where it's been recorded or anything like that
No,
on YouTube or
I
anything?
haven't. No.
That's a shame.
Yeah, he's getting old. He's 9 this year.
Wow. So going back to the airport, do you ever come across like passengers and stuff and just people passing through that kind of give you inspiration for poetry?
Yeah, it's mostly the environment that's like really inspirational, because
Yeah.
like you're at the public arrivals area and you see people meeting after a long time, or
Right.
you see people in the departures area and they're like sobbing and they're red and
Yeah.
like they're like really sad from going away, and that kind of thing is really inspiring. However, I haven't like picked up my pen to write
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
I've just looked at it from afar and been like, that's really good material. When you're not in the uni grind, it's hard to pick up your pen and like
Yeah,
right away.
yeah.
You
I
know,
hear ya,
when I don't have
I
a
hear ya.
deadline or a due date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those sorts of things that help you get that process.
Yeah.
Maybe you should write something, an observance poem or prose
Yeah.
about your observance at the airport for Scaredy Cats.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
You could write a poem about us, contacting you and bringing you along to this interview and
Having
the
a
camera
mini
in your face.
reunion.
Yeah. No, good. One thing I did want to ask, Kyla, sorry, I'll rephrase the question. What I wanted to know was, would you recommend creative writing or a creative arts degree to people who aspire to write, to become a poet, prose, plays? Would you recommend academic study in that field?
So do you mean would I recommend
Yeah. Like,
creative arts or?
yeah, in creative arts, but our stream was creative writing.
Yeah.
There is a school that goes that creative arts degrees, including writing, formulates the creativity rather than allowing it to be spontaneous. So it becomes a trained sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's your feelings about that? Have you experienced it or?
Well, from our creative writing degree, I felt it was we had so much freedom. We didn't really we got a lot of teachings of different writers, different stories, and different ways to write and stuff like that. But I never felt formulated to write a certain way, because it was so freeing.
Yeah.
But with having so much freedom, sometimes it would be really hard to write, and find something to write about because you have so much free time and like you tend to procrastinate. And, yeah.
It's a student thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. But it would be interesting, like how other creative writing students do it. How like when they're in a more academic
Sure.
degree.
Mm.
That's kind of like MIT versus UOA. Like,
Because one of the things I've heard from numerous creatives, whether they be academically qualified or actually just been in the industry, so to speak, is that formulation. A number of books and stories I read now, I sense a formulaic approach. Oh no, and we understand it having studied it. You've got to go and you've got to have a little climax, and then you sort of like, and then there's got to be a contradiction and so on. Now that's formula, isn't it?
yeah.
And how would you prevent that formulaic process from creeping in on your work? This is just a generic question,
Yeah.
really, out of my own interest.
I just
See how other people think.
Well, I read as much as I can from people that I like and from people that I want to be as experimental as in writing. Carrie recently lended me this book from poet Fatima Asghar. I think I'm pronouncing it right. From her poetry collection, If They Come For Us, or When They Come For Us. And it has this grid in her poetry book, and like these, it's just poetry in a grid, and you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't normally think like, oh, that's a normal poetry structure. So seeing experimental things like that helps me like think more creatively. So like exposing yourself to as much art as you can, and like helps.
So if your work starts fitting grids, then you need to give it a rattle. Otherwise you're starting to subconsciously or otherwise. I am aware of a number of writers, well-known writers, that we all know, who are formulaic. It is a formula. Their stories are still good, their movies get made, and all that, but they admit that, no, this is a formula I adopt, I practice, Stephen King being one of the biggest.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered what about that formulaic approach and its creep on your natural creativeness or spontaneity of that. So thank you for your thoughts on that.
That's a really interesting question, actually. And I just realized, like, I never think about formula. I never think about
Because as writers, it just comes naturally.
You're never writing like a stanza or a paragraph and being like, does this fit into A, B, C, D? It's just writing it.
Yeah, right.
Is that like? Is that I would think that then it becomes, that's a, dare I say it, that's a true writer. That's an inspirational writer who just writes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to try and write according to a formula. I'm just going to write.
Yeah.
I find more often than not you get truth.
Yeah.
You get feeling, you get emotion. It's not massaged or
Yeah.
anything, you know. Does that reflect in a lot of poetry, do you think? That sort of... The just being finding that honesty, a way, not considering any formula. Okay, this is going to be a four-line stanza. Might be 5, might be 3.
Yeah.
You know, that absolute creativity and being right in the moment you were talking about before.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so many poems are written so differently, and I think that's going against formula and just seeing what works for the author and how their poems are interpreted, because like no poet or poem is the same to each other, and like no one's going to read it the same way, so why put it in a formula? Why put it in a formula when, like, you know, I'm not going to read it the same way as the next person is going to read it, so might as well like experiment as much as you can.
Nice, because we asked Mike that same question, only in different words. And he was very much of the same sort of response. look, oh yeah, you can write formulaic, he actually said. But really, it's just about writing, saying what you want to say, feeling what you are saying, and how it comes out is how it goes.
Yeah.
Rather than then applying formula, okay, we'll knock that out and chamfer that and create that perfect picture. So Mike sort of tends to follow the same school of thought, that particularly in poetry, he reflected it towards poetry. Poetry's got to be honest, it's got to be about who you are, what you see, what you say, what you want to say.
Yeah.
And damn the rest of it.
Damn it, yeah. Because I think, like, thinking about the formula adds more stress onto it, more stress and, like, structure, kind of, and, like, then the poems become, the piece of writing becomes more about how is this going to fit into this, rather than how is it going to say what I want to say. Yeah.
Any warning against that? How to prevent that?
Don't go to uni. Just write in your bedroom.
But I did have a couple of good debates about that particular subject with Catherine and Dan. Not from a that's wrong or right, but just exploring that whole idea.
Yeah, conversation about it. Yeah,
I think that's what we're doing here. Is we're not saying one way or the other or anything.
No,
just exploring that whole idea of it.
And you're never going to please anyone, so and please everyone, so like write what you want to write.
So, aside from poetry, do you write anything else?
Well, my passion for writing started with writing prose, actually, and writing short stories and stuff like that. Right. But I started to get lazy and wanted to write things that were like shorter, and like poetry fit that. But from then, poetry has stuck with me, and I tend to get lazy with poetry as well, because like even though it's like short, like a shorter piece of writing, like there's so much that goes into it, so much technique and emotions that come with it.
Well, I mean, you're putting like all your energy right there onto the page, so of course it would, kind of drain you.
Yeah.
Is prose something you'd ever go back to, or just poetry for life?
Yeah, I would like to like get back into it when like I feel the time is right. Yeah. I really enjoyed creative nonfiction when I got to study it. Right. In our second year. So yeah, maybe I'll come back to that.
Cool.
When I'm not lazy.
Do you have any final comments before we wrap this up? Like anything you want to plug, like upcoming shows or just anything? Maybe an Instagram or something?
I don't know of any upcoming shows at the moment, since I'm like like hermit and like not in touch with anything.
True. Well, do you want to advertise the airport you work at?
Stay out. So my job is easy. I don't have anything to advertise.
No? Okay, cool.
But you got to Google Kyla and go find her poems.
Yeah.
Have a look at them that are online. I did. No, brilliant. I like that. And again.
Oh yeah, the one was like really close up to my face.
That's a cool poem.
Thank
you.
Cool
poem, man. I like that.
I was thinking about that poem the other night because I forgot about that poem. I was like, oh, that poem exists.
Oh yeah. And because we missed videoing your show at the AWF, I carried the camera around with me all day to film you guys, but not knowing whether we were going to be allowed to film or not. Yeah. So I'm filming other stuff that we were covering, and then I finally get to your show and I hear that it's okay to film it and put it on online. So I click the camera on, it lasts for 10 seconds and the battery's flat. So I was really shattered and kicking myself. But I'd really like for people to go and see your performance, either on online at Google, Kyla, or go to a show. Or if they get them, I emailed the AWF and asked them, when are you going to have this footage from the 10 to 2 here, the Poets Showcase? Haven't received any reply yet.
I'm not sure if they recorded it or not.
No, I wasn't sure either. I noted they did. record other shows. And I thought, man, my bloody camera I would have had.
He wants me to believe he has softened his edges. Doesn't know I can feel his jagged lies from here. Can still smell the venom beneath this good guy act. There's a text in my hand. Hey, it's been a long time. How are you? Language is asking to be explosive through my thumbs. I am at a bus stop wondering how to make a grenade out of letters to text back and turn him into ashes. I want to send a cannon emoji that would literally blow him up. Better yet, I wish there was a dick being stomped on emoji. Maybe then he'd understand what I meant a year ago, when I said I never want to see him again. His face polluting my timeline is enough already. It is enough when friends who have never seen him the way I did smile with him in pictures. It is enough when they tell me to simmer down. Turn off the heat when talking about him. As if, after everything, my anger is the last thing I deserve. As if building me a prison, claiming me possession was just a boys will be boys thing. Like having a violent tongue and low-tempered fists was just part of his anatomy. He wants to know how I am. Like it's easy to put into words how I have been bathing my amnesia, cleansing myself from the memory of the Lucifer in his laugh. Tried to convince me I was only beautiful when I lived by his commandments. I haven't forgotten. There are nights I lose sleep wondering which supposed angel has been hiding their horns all along. Maybe someday he will simply be just a boy I used to know instead of a wicked memory. But I can't forgive him yet. Forgiveness is too polite. And I can't say I'm a well-mannered tongue when all I think about is cutting him in half, just to watch the demons crawl out of his guts to send back to the hell they came from. Boy, if you really want to know how I am, ask me to my face who I've become. I will show you the rebuilding from ruins you made out of me. The rage that was caged too long in this body, how it twitches, fumes, ready to attack. If you have softened your edges, know that I have filed down my nails for blood, been sharpening my skin, grew this machete spine with an untamed reflex just for you. Mess with this holy place again, and I will show you how I've learned to erupt.